And it's hot, hot, hot. We're in California.
Palm Springs. It's 1:15 today.
Wow!
Happy summer.
Happy summer. That's right. And welcome everyone to the Green Nurse Podcast, Clinical Conversations, where we bring hope and inspiration for growth and healing. We're here to change the dialogue and stigma around what it means to feel good and be high, hence the H for hope, I for inspiration, G for growth, and H for healing. It is okay to feel good. Everyone deserves to feel good, and so do you. So the Green Nurse Clinical Conversations webcast came about when Nurse Elizabeth and I merged our companies, Holistic Caring and the Green Nurse,
Back in 21.
alongside of Bloom Hemp, creating Holistic Caring Network. Clinical Conversations explores all aspects of how to optimize cannabis as medicine. This is Elizabeth's favorite quote. Go ahead, you do it.
People are making great medicines. People are selling these great medicines, but nobody's interpreting how to use cannabis as medicine clinically for patients. And that's what we do.
There we go. So happy July, everyone. Happy freedom and happy birthday month to me. It's my birthday this month.
On the 20th.
That's right. And we're going to be celebrating big, loud and proud this weekend in San Diego for sure.
Yes.
Going to be seeing Stick Figure. Really excited.
Stick Figure and Shakespeare.
That's
Doesn't
right.
get any better than that.
Best birthday. So this month's newsletter from Holistic Caring and the Green Nurse and Bloom Hemp shines a spotlight on freedom and unveils our latest study findings on Bloom Hemp Advanced Focus Tincture. So the first link that you see down there will bring you to that blog, and it's on both Holistic Caring and the Green Nurse as well as Bloom Hemp. And today's clinical discussion is an overview on the therapeutic use of cannabis, reflections in real-world evidence, featuring insightful legacy case studies and some of our case studies here at Holistic Caring and the Green Nurse and some of the patients that we've worked with. But before we get started on that, we're going to show a quick little video about what we do in the cannabis space as nurses, and then we will get right into it. Partners in Health, here we come.
Change the paradigm of healthcare.
The Green Nurse is a holistic cannabis nurse that teaches on the endocannabinoid system and the safe utilization of cannabis and other progressive tools to help people reach a better quality of life.
I'm the founder of Holistic Caring. We're based here in California, and we do educational programs and case management for patients on how to use cannabis therapeutically as a medicine.
We're also here to decrease stigma around what it means to feel good and be high, hence the H for hope, I for inspiration, G for growth, and H for healing.
As the founder of Holistic Caring, I basically oversee the whole ship. And what we're doing is progressive education.
Cannabis actually supports all 11 organ systems, our immune system, and all the neurotransmitter signaling systems that give messages to tell our body to either do something or not do something. Because the plant was prohibited, it prevented health professionals, doctors and nurses from learning about cannabis as medicine.
I want to change the paradigm of healthcare and us paving the way into a new vanguard of medicine.
It's about education, it's about empowerment, it's about teaching people how to feel good, bridging the gap from what they're not getting from traditional medicine, utilizing different plant medicines, adaptogens, tips, tricks, hugs, and nugs of information to support and nourish the most important system in our body.
And it's a lot of soul work, a lot of love, a lot of discipline, and meditation. I'm using my life work as a testimony to others to learn how they can be their own hero and then go help heal the world.
And we are, as nurses, the game changers.
Well, there you go. Growing in health, growing in cannabis, blooming in health.
Blooming in health. Yeah.
Yes. So this was a little video about what we do in the cannabis space. But before we get started on our presentation, and it's a long one, we are going to have a special message from our sponsors at Bloom Hemp. So Elizabeth, today's show is brought to you by
Bloom Hemp. So Bloom Hemp is a woman and nurse-owned hemp CBD company grown in the mountains of Colorado with USDA organic premium CBD. It is triple tested for potency, purity, cannabinoid, and terpene profiles. And Bloom Hemp is proud to offer a free nurse line if you call 970-404-HOPE. Or you can email us info@bloomhemp.com. Go to the services tab, click on that. There's a free intake form where you can fill out an intake. And then within a day, you will get a free email care plan to your inbox on how to use these products and some lifestyle tips suited to you.
There we go. Thank you, Bloom Hemp, for sponsoring the show today. So today we are going to be bringing up this amazing slide deck that we've been working on. And I'm going to pull that right up.
Well, yeah, and I just want to preface this by, this is Sherri's signature speech. So she's allowing me to participate and do some of these slides, but she got to present this at the American Holistic Nursing Association in Rochester, Minnesota at the Mayo Center. And I was so proud to be in the front row. And so we're going to recap some of this for you today.
Yes, and we've edited a little bit so Elizabeth can participate as well, because guess what? Sharing is caring for sure. So clinical conversations, therapeutic use of cannabis, reflections, and real world evidence. This is Marianne. Marianne actually introduced me to cannabis when I was sick and suffering and on the other side of the bed way back in 2012. She's a 70-year-old nurse who brought to me her harvest. She actually brought me a cannabis joint, her harvest from her garden. And she disclosed to me that she had been using cannabis every day since she was 17 years old. And she wasn't on any pharmaceuticals, nor had she ever been hospitalized. So I had to take a look at that. So back in 2012, I was sick, I was suffering, I was on 18 pharmaceuticals, and I literally almost died. I wanted to die most days, but I didn't. Marianne came to the rescue, and this is the power of the spoken word and the power of sharing compelling stories of healing. Marianne disclosed to me also that her father was a pharmacist, and he carried cannabis formulations in his pharmacy prior to 1937. Yep. So I had to really take a big look at that. So, I'm sure you've all heard, or have you heard, cannabis saved my life. Cannabis gave me my life back. Cannabis is giving me a better day. Cannabis has improved the quality of my life. And for me, cannabis is truly helping me to live my best life. So the therapeutic use of cannabis brings the high across all domains, that hope, inspiration, growth, and healing to spiritual, physical, emotional, mental, and social health. And cannabis works so well for so many different patient populations and conditions because it affects the body and mind in such a way as to support and fortify the body's capacity for self-healing and resilience by doing what? Promoting the relaxation response. So cannabis nursing is identified by the American Cannabis Nurses Association as a specialty nursing practice focused on the care of healthcare consumers seeking education and guidance in the therapeutic use of cannabis.
So, and we are very proud to say that last fall, the American Nursing Association accepted the ACNA, the American Cannabis Nursing Association, scope and standards of practice. And what that means is that over time, it's going to be board certified as a specialty. We're working on what that looks like at several different levels between ACNA and ANA. But they are providing safe access to therapeutic cannabis and related cannabinoids for over 20 years. Cannabis nursing is holistic nursing, and we are holistic caring, doing it right together with hopefully millions of other nurses.
That's right. Very, very excited. So the therapeutic use of cannabis is the use of cannabis products specifically for medicinal, wellness, and healing purposes. It's personal and subjective to each consumer, with objective criteria being improvement in one of the 5 health domains: biological, spiritual, emotional, psychological, and social, right? And so therapeutics encompasses the comprehensive approach to patient care, aiming to combat, prevent, and alleviate disease, pain, and injury. So therapeutics means serving and caring for the patient in a comprehensive manner, preventing disease, as well as managing specific problems. So examples of therapeutics through history include drug therapy, medical devices, nutrition therapy, stem cell therapies, and cannabis therapeutics is evolving. This has been around for thousands of years, and it's available as a tool for root cause healing and health as expanding consciousness.
And a quick timeline, and we're not going to go into this ad litem, but this therapeutic timeline really explains the evolution of cannabis in America, just in America. But in 1850, we had cannabis entered into the dispensatory, which is our pharmacopoeia, and that's the list of all of the drugs that we had available. And that's when pharmacists started carrying it in the pharmacies. 1937, the Marijuana Tax Act passed. Prohibition shifted from alcohol to cannabis. It was largely motivated by corporate interests, racism, and greed, and just really misunderstanding of this plant. They had no idea what they were doing. And then in 1941, it was removed from the pharmacopoeia, and then pharmacists couldn't carry it anymore. 1970, Richard Nixon passed the Controlled Substance Act, slating cannabis in Schedule 1. He didn't want to jail the hippies for just being hippies, so he criminalized the medicine that they were using. And that is how cannabis got into the Controlled Substance Act, Schedule 1, with heroin and LSD, no medical benefits, and highly addictive, dangerous, and abusive, even under medical watch, which we know was wrong. 1996, California brought it back. We passed Prop 215, where we were able to, with a doctor recommendation, use medical cannabis for therapeutic purposes. And then in 2024, we have now 38 medical states, 24 adult use states. We know that cannabis nursing is on its way to a specialty, and the HHS and the FDA petitioned the DEA to remove it from Schedule 1, which is where we're at right now. And in fact, if you go to normal.org, NORML.org, they are still in the last few days of public comments to the DEA. So if you want to voice your opinion, please go and do so right away.
Yep. And Schedule 3 recognizes cannabis as a medicinal drug. And we see this as glass half full.
Yeah, we're optimists.
We're optimists. And also because when you look at the definition of the therapeutic use of cannabis, actually recreational use is therapeutic use. I'm just going to leave it at that. Right. And go ahead.
Because it downshifts the stress response.
It does.
Right. And so the US government has a patent on cannabinoids. And did you know that? Right. Like it's the patent number 6630507. And cannabinoids are patented as antioxidants and neuroprotectants. So capable of preserving our nerve cells from dying and excessive excitation, from glutamate, etc., but they can protect cells from damage and decay following ischemic insults such as stroke and trauma, and may hold therapeutic potential to treat neurodegenerative diseases such as Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, and dementias.
There we go. And then Pal Pekar and George Kunos are those physician scientists that actually wrote the patent in 2003. And they pretty much stated that modulating the endocannabinoid system holds therapeutic potential in all human diseases. And you can see this list here, and you can see the little numbers on the list there. And those are actually go to the real research studies. Mm-hmm. And this happens through retrograde signaling of the endocannabinoid system. So the endocannabinoid system is the largest neurotransmitter signaling system in our body. It maintains homeostasis of all systems, impacting all body systems for optimal functioning.
Yeah, and retrograde signaling is how it does it. So the endocannabinoid system 101, normally presynaptic to postsynaptic, but what the ECS does is it sends messages back in a feedback loop to be able to correct cell signaling to keep us at balance.
Here we go. And therapeutic use. Look, I love this slide, right? Therapeutic use, pharmacological actions of non-psychotropic cannabinoids. So there are currently over 40,000 studies, and this slide points us towards the future. And one day, CBD and minor cannabinoids will be used to modulate all disease. And this doesn't even include THC. THC is very important, but I found that this slide was just very, very impactful and truly shows the pleiotropic nature of cannabis as medicine.
And cannabis is one of the most researched plants on earth. Not even just plants, but compounds. So the therapeutic use, cannabis and CBD, we talk about, is it a pharmaceutical drug? Is it a recreational drug? Or is it a dietary supplement for wellness? Well, cannabis and hemp is all of the above. Pharmaceuticals, we have Epidiolex, Marinol, and Sativax, which are pharmaceutical versions of CBD, THC, and a 1-to-1 CBD THC oil. And then, of course, recreational access, we have cannabis and CBD at dispensaries. And then the hemp lines are sold online and at retailers and farmers markets and all over the place. But the best ones are probably online and can be used for mood enhancement, spiritual enhancement, exercise recovery, metabolism, immune system, neurological systems, aiding that balance, especially in the nervous and the immune systems, reducing pain, helping sleep, slowing down aging, and balancing all of our other systems to bring us back to homeostasis, or that Goldilocks set point where everything just works.
That's right. All right. And here we go. So here we go. Another one of my favorite slides. So the therapeutic use of cannabis, just to reiterate, is personal and subjective to each consumer, with objective criteria being improvement in functionality in one or more of the 5 health domains: biological, mental, emotional, spiritual, and social. One of my favorite quotes is by Vincent DiMarzo. There's a great book by Dr. Michelle Stexon called Eat, Sleep, Relax, Forget, Protect, right? So our autonomic systems are modulated by the endocannabinoids, seeking to balance all physiological systems for homeostasis, right? So think of the Goldilocks zone is that balanced body. And so we're comprised of 30 trillion cells broken down into 11 organ systems, our immune system, regulated by the master regulatory system called the endocannabinoid system. And when we're talking about therapeutic use, we people are like, oh, is recreational use misuse? And my answer is no, it's not, right? Misuse of cannabis and adverse side effects are generally from using too much THC or unregulated products. Recreational and adult use is not misuse. Euphoria is not a crime. It is okay to feel good. And so as nurses, when people are consuming recreationally, we want to help them to choose products that are going to actually have a beneficial effect to whatever is going on in their body. Mm-hmm. So every variable contributes to the therapeutic use and experienced effect. And this has to do with the endocannabinoid system and the endocannabinoid dome, which includes the endocannabinoid system, the lipidome, microbiome, and all of the other neurotransmitter signaling systems. Anything else to add?
No, that you got it.
I covered that slide. Good. Mm-hmm. All right.
Yeah, and here's one of the big takeaways. We can reduce the reliance on pharmaceuticals. Over half of the cannabis consumers, 54%, according to New Frontier Data, which is a national consumer survey company, said that they're replacing pharmaceuticals mostly for pain, sleep, arthritis, OTC drugs like NSAIDs and sleep aids. And then they're viewing it as a potentially harm reduction tool for themselves because it's less costly and it's also less costly to the body with side effects.
And then to go along with that one.
Oh, and pain is, of course, the most treated condition, along with anxiety, panic attacks, depression, sleep, PTSD, etc. But pain, 47%. Anxiety, etc. You can read the slide, but 93% said that it helped their condition, which is huge. When we approve pharmaceuticals, they only have to meet a 35% threshold. And most of the time we're doing cannabis studies, you see that the numbers far north of that.
There we go. Okay, and this is one of my favorite slides. Thank you so much, Dr. Uwe Bleshing of Cannakeys. So these are the top 20 conditions by number of clinical studies for therapeutic use. And these are double-blind, placebo-controlled clinical human trials that have shown proven therapeutic effects. So Cannakeys is a great resource for up-to-date current research. And this slide is to show the top 20 conditions by number of clinical studies. And like I said, these are double-blind, placebo-controlled human trials that have shown therapeutic effects. In later slides, as we discuss some of the case studies, we're going to see a correlation between real-world evidence and research.
Okay, so THC, this is, when people think of cannabis, they think of THC. It's a multi-target molecule that's binding with numerous cell receptors throughout our body, but especially CB1 and CB2. Think about our central channel, our brain, and our spinal cord, really directly and indirectly initiating biological changes in the body, mind, and emotions. And of course, Marinol is synthetic THC. It was approved by the FDA in 1985 for the treatment of chemotherapy-induced nausea and vomiting.
And so we're pretty much thinking this is the reason why they're choosing Schedule 3
Yeah,
is because
that's what Marinol is.
Marinol sits on Schedule 3.
Yep.
All right. And then again, look at this slide. This slide's huge here.
Yeah, it's just, these are all live links back to Canakeys of all of the conditions. There is clinical evidence for THC to benefit every single one of them.
Yep. And one of my favorite things is just, we look at it. The plant makes THC. We make anandamide. The molecular structure is very similar, anandamide and THC. This allows for THC to mimic anandamide by connecting to the nerve cell receptor in its place to correct cell signaling.
Just mimicking it right there at CB1.
Yep. And again, CB2 or CBD. CBD is for me. So CBD works on over 70 targets in the body. Wow, really powerful. And you can see all of the studies that exist here. And in June of 2018, Epidiolex was approved by the FDA, a pharmaceutical version of CBD for rare pediatric seizure disorders that do not respond to anti-epileptics, Lennox-Gastaut syndrome, and Dravet syndrome. And we have a slide on Charlotte Figi coming up in a little bit just to describe all of that and what happened. And again, all the research again on CBD. Very, very powerful. So there is research. So don't let any of the naysayers out there tell you that there isn't, because there is research.
And you can see the chemical structure here for CBD. It doesn't fit into CB1 and CB2 like THC, like lock and key, but CBD is very promiscuous. It is active at almost 70 other receptor sites all around our body, which is why it can help on so many different fronts.
Yep. That's another good one. Okay, so here we go. So legacy and historical case studies. So case studies are medical presentation on a patient's treatment history. So each of these historical studies helps expand our consciousness towards understanding cannabis as medicine. And the therapeutic use of cannabis is vast, moving beyond receptor targets for multimodal pleiotropic holistic healing. We're going to talk about Robert Randall and glaucoma, and particularly inhalation. We're going to talk about Mary Jane Rothward, the HIV and AIDS movement with edibles and the chocolate brownies that she made. And then we're going to talk about Charlotte Figi, epilepsy and Dravet syndrome in these next coming slides. So glaucoma, first medical cannabis patient in 1976, Robert Randall. I want to give a big shout out to Alice O'Leary Randall for providing a lot of this information. She's been doing a lot of great work all throughout the years in cannabis advocacy. So his story goes as follows. Robert was diagnosed with glaucoma and discovered that cannabis helped his symptoms. Surprise, surprise, right? And guess what happened to Robert? He was arrested for possession of cannabis that he was medicating with to treat his glaucoma. And guess what he did? Very brave man, and look how adorable he is. He fought the charges and he made legal medical history when a criminal court ruled that Robert's use of cannabis was a medical necessity, and he obtained legal supplies of cannabis from the federal government to treat his glaucoma. So Robert was the first patient to obtain federal supplies of cannabis from the University of Mississippi for medical purposes, glaucoma, and he used inhalation and smoked. So they actually shipped him a tin of 300 cannabis joints a month.
Night of cigarettes.
Yep, night of cigarettes. So 10 cannabis joints a day to lower his eye pressure. And in 1980, Robert founded the Alliance of Cannabis Therapeutics Act with a focus on national legislative and rescheduling. And he was an activist and he helped many, many people until he died in 2001. And then just to go a little bit more into glaucoma, and the slides from Canakeys, which I love, is preclinical and clinical trials suggest that the administration of THC and CBD induce different relevant effects. THC consistently reduced interocular pressure, CBN reduced interocular pressure, but CBD at higher doses only in mice models increase interocular pressure. So THC activates numerous receptors, but it appears to lower interocular pressure by increasing the outflow of aqueous humor, which is the fluid in the eye, or by decreasing its production. And also the therapeutic use of cannabis can also help with other things that people might be experiencing when they have glaucoma. So retinal neuroprotective effects, reducing interocular pressure, analgesic, because glaucoma can be very, very painful, anti-inflammatory, and antioxidant. And of note, if you look at the studies and the research here, overall positive, 84%. Okay, cannabis is medicine. And this man proved that to be so.
Yeah.
Very grateful for that. And I love this slide here. Mary Jane Rothburn, Brownie Mary, All I do is make a world a better place, one brownie at a time. So she was actually the Florence Nightingale of the medical cannabis movement and LGBTQ rights in the late 1980s, early 1990s. So she was a hospital volunteer in the San Francisco General Hospital, and she became known as the Angel of Mercy for baking and distributing cannabis brownies to AIDS patients. So these brownies actually treated pain, nausea, appetite loss, wasting syndrome, anxiety, and depression. And so these medicinal chocolate squares brought comfort and peace to those suffering from lack of medicine, research, and compassion that came with being diagnosed with AIDS. Really, really horrible for this patient population. And I remember being a nurse back in those days and seeing how much that they suffered. She was arrested 3 times, which was amazing because it increased attention to the medical cannabis movement. So the city of San Francisco permitted her to distribute her cannabis brownies to people with AIDS. And her arrest motivated research to propose one of the first clinical trials to study the effects of cannabinoids in HIV-infected adults. So the AIDS crisis in particular taught us the pleiotropic nature of cannabis, not just on receptor targets, but how it is multidimensional, multimodal, as we work with the endocannabinoid system in the endocannabinoid dome. And again, here's a slide, AIDS. This is an amazing slide from Cannakeys in general. You know, when people are suffering from AIDS, they have a weakened immune system causing opportunistic infections from fungi, bacteria, and viruses, causing all of these conditions. There is no cure for AIDS. You know, a lot of times consumers need to be going on all of these other antiretroviral agents, protease inhibitors, reverse transcriptase inhibitors, and they're looking to just treat the opportunistic infections and symptoms. So it's treating the symptoms to relieve suffering and improve quality of life. Cannabinoids are facilitators of that. Really, really powerful. Overall positive in research, 61%.
That's huge.
Really big. Okay, here's a big one. Hopefully I don't cry with this one. So how many moms would do anything for their child? You know, I would. Right. And we have an article coming up actually on July 15th that we're going to be releasing on National Cleft Lip and Palate. My son was born with a rare genetic disorder, and I know I did anything for him. So this mother, Charlotte Paige Fiji, was that mom. Charlotte Fiji was a little girl, and she suffered with Dravet syndrome, which is a refractory seizure condition. And her condition inspired the CBD movement and helped birth a brand, Charlotte's Web. Charlotte was not defined by her story. It was said that she changed the world, and she did. She taught us the true meaning of that word, hope, inspiration, and growth and healing for what plant medicine can do for people. So here's a little bit about Charlotte's story. So she started having seizures at the age of 3 months old, and she was diagnosed with Dravet syndrome. And for those that don't know that, this is a very, very, very severe form of epilepsy. It's causing refractory seizures that are very difficult to treat. There is a very high mortality rate due to the intense prolonged seizures that they have. So by the age of 5 in 2012, she was having 300 seizures a week, one every 30 minutes. So she was, oh my God, it makes me cry.
Yeah.
So she actually was on over 7 medications with side effects, unable to eat, using a feeding tube, unable to walk, needed a wheelchair, was nonverbal with little or no quality of life. Can you imagine a seizure every 30 minutes? Her heart stopped twice from medications, and her mom had to do CPR. So here comes the Stanley brothers, right? In Colorado. These are an amazing group of men, 7 brothers in Colorado, grew a strain low in THC and high in CBD called Hippie's Disappointment. Right. And they grew this in hopes of helping with seizures someday.
And other medical issues.
And other medical issues as well. Exactly. So this family became refugees. We call them medical cannabis refugees. And they ended up going to Colorado, meeting with the Stanley brothers. And the first day that she took the oil, she had 0 seizures, 0 side effects. And her seizures went from literally 300 a week to 1 weekly. And so she titrated up to 100 milligrams of CBD twice a day. So CW Botanicals was started with medicinal CBD oil formulations of Charlotte's Web. Stanley Brothers renamed Hippie's Disappointment to Charlotte's Web. In 2014, Charlotte was on CNN Sanjay Gupta weed documentary, which reported on her results and told her story. And in 2018, the FDA approved Epidiolex for treatment of refractory seizures in patients greater than 2 years old. Very, very powerful. So when she started taking her cannabis oil, she started walking, talking, eating, playing, engaging, learning, communicating, going to school. And she was actually the first child on the cover of High Times magazine. And she died in 2020 after contracting pneumonia, which caused seizures, respiratory, and cardiac arrest. And so April 7th, the day that she died, has been named Charlotte Figi Day in Colorado to celebrate her life and her legacy. And interesting enough, on that day is when the DEA removed Epidiolex from the controlled substance list. Very, very powerful story. Mm-hmm. So another slide here, which is great. The reported benefits of patients with epilepsy using cannabis therapeutics. So CBD has been shown to positively impact the brain of epileptic patients because of its neuroprotective effects. CBD targets multiple receptors in the brain, including CB1 and CB2, GABA A receptors, FA inhibition, allowing more of our own anandamide to circulate in our system longer, 5-HT1A, TRPV1, TRPV2, and GPR55. So the therapeutic use of cannabis for these patients reduces seizures, improves alertness, improves memory, provides better mood, better sleep, better appetite, improves social interactions, less use of anti-epileptic drugs. These anti-epileptic drugs actually cause this little girl's heart to stop, right? So we need very, very dangerous. And so the number one thing, less suffering and improved quality of life. And the overall positive results for using CBD in epilepsy and seizure disorders is 83%. Huge.
So no one can say that this is not medicine.
This is medicine.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're
going to talk about some case studies now, and just like we talked about it with Robert and Mary Rathburn and the AIDS crisis in San Francisco. By the way, I moved from Chicago to San Francisco in 1990 July, and was taking care of those patients in the hospital, very, very sick patients. Yeah. Never forget it. But we're going to pivot more towards pain now.
Yes, we're going to talk about pain.
We're going to talk about chronic pain, the number one treatment that people are treating. And we're going to blend, how we talk about the relevant scientific, physiological, mind, body, and psychological evidence, the patient's preferences about what kind of cannabis experience they wish to have and how we can meet them there. And then our clinical judgment and the expertise in cannabis. The therapeutic cannabis experience is really working towards those optimal patient outcomes, where we're not just giving a pill for every ill. We're saying, what does this patient need? What do they want? What does the science say? And then creating a care plan focused on combining the science and the research with real world evidence that we have after 6,000 patients to help patients reach their health goals. And it really is sitting down. Our number one question to them is, what are your goals and objectives, and how do we help you get there?
There we go. Again, pain is the number one condition in the United States for cannabis. Pain is the alarm of disease, the symptom that announces that all is not right with our smart bodies. Yeah. And, we'd found that 93% said that it helped their condition here. This is just a repeat slide just to kind of get you started.
And no one has ever died from cannabis. So when we talk about pain, we have to compare and contrast that to opiates and NSAIDs, right? NSAIDs cause terrible stomach issues, GI bleeds. I've seen several of those from people popping too much Motrin. And of course, opiates, we have somebody dying every 16 minutes in America from opiates, and that's 91 opioid overdoses per day. And every 11 minutes, someone fatally overdoses on any kind of pharmaceutical drug. So if you lump all the other ones in there, you have overdose death as policy failure. But because there's no CB1 or CB2 receptors directly in the brainstem, even if you take way too much and you feel very uncomfortably high, you're just going to sleep eventually, and you're not going to die. You cannot overdose on cannabis. So it's much, much safer. And pain has, we talked about the 81% or 89%, depending on what figures you're sampling from. But there are all kinds of different pain: acute, cancer, central pain, chronic pain, eye, inflammatory, neuropathic pain, which it's very good for, cannabis is. diabetic polyneuropathy, chemotherapy-induced neuropathy, etc. And Kanekey's research shows an overall favorable results of 81%. In our experience, caring for thousands of patients, we can accomplish a lot by modulating the endocannabinoid system and the endocannabinoid dome with other lifestyle activities, minor cannabinoids, terpenes, and supplements to keep THC dosing low, which is key, maximizing the benefits and minimizing the harms. And that's always the sweet spot of cannabis care management. And when we talk about the different types of pain, there are several, right? So cannabinoid-based therapeutics, THC and CBD have shown degrees of efficacy in treating the 8 basic types: chronic, acute, central, peripheral, inflammatory, noxious or nociceptive, pathological, and mental and emotional pain. Opioids outrank cannabinoids in acute pain only. However, we're not meant to be on opioids for longer than 5 to 7 days. And when you look at all of this diagram from Kanekey's, it really does show that cannabinoids have a really great track record here of modulating all of these different types of pain, much better than opioids.
Yep, and literally, I'm the living example. I was on 18 pharmaceuticals. 18 pharmaceuticals. And
I was on a dozen.
Right, and basically pharmaceutical free, pain free with CBD and THC.
I found high CBD FECO, and I healed my 3 shoulder surgeries finally. And when we're talking about analgesia, there are many different pathways that the cannabinoids can activate and modulate. When we talk about receptor targets throughout our body, this diagram shows cannabinoid receptors are widely distributed across numerous pain modulating pathways, including our central and peripheral sensory neurons, brain regions responsible for sensory discrimination, pain regulating networks in the brainstem, and emotional centers that influence responses to painful stimuli. There are many pathways, and when we look at the endocannabinoid system in particular, we're looking at CB1 receptors for central nervous system centered analgesia and CB2 receptors of inflammation-based analgesia, as well as others listed when looking at products to educate on for modulation of pain. Shorthand, CB1 is our central channel where we really get to the pain pathways in the brain and the spinal cord. And CB2, think about our inflammatory conditions throughout the immune cells. And we have immune cells all over our body. And when these are activated, they can go back to that Goldilocks set point I've talked about earlier, back to balance, where we're not at those alarm bells.
Yep, no more ding-dong alarm bells for sure.
Yeah, and then the dosing protocol for medical cannabis with chronic pain. This is a very conservative summary, but a 2021 publication of 20 global experts across 9 countries developed a consensus-based recommendation on how to dose and administer medical cannabis in patients with chronic pain. It's always starting off with CBD. So we start with CBD, 5 milligrams twice a day, titrate up. 2 to 3 every 2 to 3 days, you go up by 5 milligrams until you get to about 40 milligrams, and then you fold in THC at 2.5 milligrams per day, and you can ratchet that up until about 20 milligrams a day. Mark Wallace, the chair of anesthesiology over at UCSD, I worked with him and heard a lot of his lectures, and he's talking about that sweet spot of being about 40 milligrams to 60 milligrams of a 1-to-1 over the day in like 10 milligram dosing. So a 1-to-1 CBD THC, 10 milligrams 4 times a day. That is also some of the protocols that I've used to wean patients off of opiates together with their doctors.
Well, there we go. And then now we have 3 consumer case studies that we're going to talk about. You've got Marta, who they couldn't find the cancer anymore, Sister Suzanne, who we helped get off of fentanyl, and my mom, who feels good and isn't high. And these are really fun stories. So all 3 of these consumers have different diagnoses, but they all came with chronic pain and sleep problems, looking to improve their quality of life. So we're going to start off with Marta. So Marta came to me, back in 2017. She was a hospice patient who was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. She had an unresectable tumor. Chemo and radiation failed her, and she was sent on hospice to die. She was unable to talk pretty much. She was really, really in a lot of pain. She was in severe pain, a lot of insomnia, and she was at the end of her life. So my meeting with her was to really, I met with her separately from her family. I met with her family, but basically, I needed to find out what she wanted, because it's not about me, right? What does she want? And she basically wanted to just relieve her suffering of cancer pain at the end of life. She just wanted to get a good night's sleep, and she wanted to do legacy work with her family. She was not looking to cure her cancer. She was just looking to feel good at the end of life. So we did CBD in the daytime, a combination of CBD and THC at night. We did CBD FECA, which is full extract cannabis oil. She got this from a dispensary. We got a couple of syringes of it. I taught the family how to break that apart. And she did 100 milligrams in divided doses during the day and evening. And then she did 20 milligrams of THC FECO at bedtime. And then just did a topical and lotions all over her body, liberally to her sore body. And basically, Marta didn't die. After about 5 months of taking low dose cannabis, no evidence of disease. So cannabis saved her life. I remember getting the phone call. It was right before Christmas. She goes, Sherri, I'm in my oncologist's office and they can't find the cancer anymore. And she goes, can you help me come off of some of my other pharmaceuticals? And so Marta and I had to go on a different kind of a journey, right? So you imagine going from end of life to alive and thriving. So we had to bring in some spiritual work, and we brought in the Caritas spiritual processes, which were part of the dying, from death and dying to alive and thriving. And today Marta is alive. I talk to her about once a month. She likes to check in with me. Her and her husband are doing well. And as a matter of fact, her husband actually got cancer, and she didn't tell me, and she put him on the same protocol that I put her on, and he as well has no evidence of disease. So her dosing today is 50 milligrams of CBD FECO daily. She does beta-caryophyllene tincture twice a day, CBD topicals, and 1-to-1 oil as needed. And her story is truly miraculous. We don't see this happening for a lot of people at all, specifically for how sick she was. And literally, they gave her weeks to live. And now here we are, years later, she's alive and thriving. And this photo was taken of us in 2021 when we were shooting a documentary. And she was very, very excited. It was great. Yeah. And so that's Marta, pain and sleep. And here we go. Sister Suzanne is another really amazing story. Sister Suzanne came to me through someone in the industry who recommended, he said, you're a nurse. She'll listen to you. She won't listen to me. And so literally Sister Suzanne and I went on a journey together as well. So she was a nun that had chronic regional pain syndrome, which is a chronic intractable pain in all 4 of her limbs. She was initially misdiagnosed with multiple sclerosis. She was on multiple pharmaceuticals, multiple polypharmacy. She fell, had a stroke. And when she came out of her stroke is when she developed the chronic regional pain syndrome. And she continued with polypharmacy, including high dose fentanyl. She was on 400 micrograms of fentanyl every 36 hours patch. Now, I used to work in the intensive care unit in the recovery room, and fentanyl, 400 micrograms of fentanyl is enough to knock someone out for surgery for many, many hours. So it's a lot of fentanyl. And, the opioid receptors are there, and that could have stopped her breathing. And it wasn't actually helping her pain. So she had a transdermal patch. She was doing lidocaine infusions. They actually did put an internal neurotransmitter stimulator in her spine for pain management. She had no quality of life. She was literally out of bed for 4 hours out of 24 a day. And her goals were pain management. She wanted to get back to the church, and she wanted to come off of fentanyl. So we started off with CBD and THC FECO tincture. So that's the full extract cannabis oil and topicals. And once she was comfortable with what it felt like to have cannabis on board, we shifted over to capsules for longer acting, and we added other botanicals and supplements. So she was taking full spectrum, full extract cannabis oil, CBD FECO capsules twice a day after breakfast and dinner. And then she was taking the CBD THC FECO capsules, a 1-to-1 combination, at lunch and bedtime. And after about 2 months, her pain decreased with improvement of functionality, and she wanted to wean off of her fentanyl. So the doctor actually weaned her off of the fentanyl. And we kept in communication, and I taught her how to self-titrate and to dose as needed. So as needed dosing was 1-to-1 fecal oil, microdosing. So she was doing 5 milligrams of CBD, 5 milligrams of THC at the same time as needed when she was weaning off the fentanyl. And then she started to include a full spectrum trilogy oil. So trilogy oil is equal amounts of CBD, CBG, and CBN, Once she weaned off the fentanyl, she did not need as much THC as she thought she would. So it was very, very interesting story. So her dosing today continues of CBD full extract cannabis oil capsules. She takes 50 milligrams twice a day. She uses the Trilogy oil 4 times a day. She uses the 1-to-1 capsules as needed. She doesn't use them every day, but as needed. And then she also uses a lot of endocannabinoid system enhancing supplements. So she uses turmeric, echinacea, omega-3 fish oils, and PEA, which is a supplement, which we educate on for those that don't want to use as much THC.
Which is also a natural cannabinoid.
It's a natural cannabinoid.
Yeah, and speaking of her dosing, we have a little bit of time. As you're at the height of illness, you need a lot of cannabinoid supplements. But as you start to heal and the body is self-correcting, you can start to wean down on that. So this answers the question, okay, so I might need to take 100 milligrams of cannabis a day, but I don't need to stay there. You can come down to 50 and 20 and 10. And Sister Suzanne is
and I'm an example is that as well. When I first started off doing cannabis, I was doing a lot of THC and a lot of CBD and a lot of inhalation and a lot of dabbing.
They're much cheaper now.
And I'm a cheap date now. I don't need as much because I've modulated my endocannabinoid system to the point where I don't need as much anymore. And I actually had a conversation with Dr. Raphael Machulam on that, believe it or not. I had asked him, do our cannabinoid requirements change over time as we change? And his answer was yes, absolutely. Right? Because, and it's all about toning, right? If you do too much THC, then you're going to have a down regulation in receptors. Your body's not going to produce enough anandamide. And we really want to have people use this in a safe and effective way. Okay. And one of my favorites is my mother. So I got to tell you guys, my mom was not a fan of cannabis. Mom, if you're out there watching today, I love you so much, but you're part of my story and part of my journey and part of how and why we teach and educate a lot of people. She was not a fan of cannabis, but she was desperate for relief. My mom thought it was the devil's lettuce. Literally, when I first started using cannabis as medicine, it was written out of the will. I kept getting letters. I was putting them in the freezer. It was really, really sad, but I had to continue on my journey because I knew that cannabis worked and I just needed to stay solid in my own journey and just be very professional and share compelling stories of healing. So it was actually Sister Suzanne's story that changed her mind. So my mom is extremely Irish Catholic and was just very nervous about it. And so when I had Sister Suzanne, when she healed and got off of her fentanyl, she started doing the podcasting circuit and she was really excited to share her story. In one of the interviews, I had asked Sister Suzanne, I said, Sister Suzanne, this is for all the people that are scared about cannabis. What would Jesus say about all this cannabis? And, Sister Suzanne held up her finger and she goes, Sherri, Jesus would say, what the frig did it take you so long to use this God-given plant that I created for you? It would be a sin not to use it. I took that clip, sent it to my mother, and literally I got a call from my mother. Okay, I'm open. What's the gateway? How do I get started? So, my mom had a lot of orthopedic injuries. She's got osteoarthritis with severe pain in her lower back, knees, and shoulders. She's had multiple surgeries, steroid injections, also on polypharmacy with various combined pharmaceuticals with no relief. So her goal at the time was to lessen pain, release suffering, get better sleep, and improve the quality of her life. So, and this is just a story of how we work with consumers. I already know what I wanted her to start on, but I needed to meet my mom where she was at because it wasn't about me. And so I needed to work with her and her spirit to get her comfortable. So we started off with just 2 ingredients, CBD isolate and MCT oil. We mixed them together and I sent that off to her to try. And I said, Mom, let's just start off with a topical. I want you to put this all over your body. And I want you to see that you're not going to get high and it's not going to hurt you. So that was the introduction. And then she called me up and she goes, it could be better, couldn't it? I go, yes, it could. I said, you can take that topical and now you can start putting it under your tongue. So that same 2 ingredients, just CBD isolate and MCT oil. And then she was kind of getting frustrated. She goes, okay, I'm ready. What's the next? Well, let's do broad spectrum CBD. So broad spectrum CBD is whole plant, 0 THC. It has the minor cannabinoids. It had CBD, the minor cannabinoids, all the terpenes, the essential fatty acids, the cannaflavins, the bioflavonoids, really rich formulation. She felt comfortable with that. Wasn't high. Okay, it can be better, can it? I go, yes, it can. So let's start you on some full spectrum CBD. So the full spectrum CBD, we started on a 20-to-1, so 20 parts CBD, 1 part THC, the legal amount, less than 0.3% THC. And she started to feel better. So she started to feel better. She's like, this is working for me. I'm very happy. Okay, now what is it like to feel it? I want to really feel it. So I said, all right, Mom, I'm going to send you a chocolate bar, but I really only want you to do 1 square. Okay. And this is the reason why I don't want you to overconsume. You're new to THC. If you get into trouble, you can take some CBD to downshift. CBD can dial down psychoactivity without taking away the medicinal effect. So I said, if you get into trouble, call me. I'll talk to you tomorrow. So literally I didn't hear from her. I'm like, I wonder what's going on with my mother. Gosh, I gave her a chocolate bar. Let's see what happens. And so the next day when I finally called her, I said, Mom, how did you do with it? She goes, well, I didn't listen. She goes, I actually ate a couple of squares. I go, well, how many squares? 3. And she goes, but it was so good. And she goes, and now I know what it feels like. I know what it feels like. I was definitely euphoric. I was definitely high, and it was absolutely wonderful. She says it was wonderful. She goes, but I won't do that much again. She had the experience. It didn't make her feel bad. She knew what to do. She took the extra THC. And today, she's doing full spectrum CBD capsules twice a day, full spectrum trilogy in the evening. And occasionally she'll do a 5 milligram THC chocolate square for mood and sleep. And basically she goes, I feel good and I'm not high. I go, well, Mom, what does it mean to feel good and not be high? She goes, well, my pains become background noise. I'm sleeping a lot better. I'm not so grumpy. I'm not as mean. I giggle a little bit more, and I'm not so depressed about my problems. And so this is a picture of my mom and her husband, Ed, and they've given permission to share. So she's truly living her best life for sure, using cannabis as medicine.
It's that biopsychosocial, physical, mental, social, spiritual.
No, that's right. And health is to the extent to which we have physical and mental energy, whether we can fully use our senses and the extent in which we can comfortably engage in meaningful activities, or like I say, live our best lives. Health is our strength, our memory, our ability to solve problems. It's our ability to cope with the challenges of life, our ability to build and sustain intimacy, and our sense of agency, positivity, and purpose. Strong health helps us to lead meaningful and productive and satisfying lives. And healing isn't actually the absence of illness or disease, but it's about living your best life and doing the best you can at any given moment. And cannabis truly is a tool for optimizing health functioning and expanding our health and consciousness for healing.
Absolutely. And we saw that physical, emotional, spiritual, social with all of those case studies. So supporting the endocannabinoid system, the endocannabinoid dome is all about holistic wellness. Many times we get patients that are struggling and in crisis, and they've been doing all of the things on this list, using good food. And if they're not, we help them get there and learn how to have a healthy diet, whole foods, and adaptogens, regular exercise, meditation, breath work, prayer, mind-body medicine, vagus nerve stimulation, massage, acupuncture, chiropractic, essential oils, or energy healing like Reiki and reconnective healing, sound baths, and the healing is very healing, music, drumming, taking away alcohol and making sure people quit smoking if they can, restorative sleep and prioritizing rest, social connections, laughter, and play. And once we're doing all of the things on this list, if they're still struggling, cannabis and hemp products need to be brought in. And a lot of times it sort of is that key. It's that master key that unlocks the efficacy of all of the other ones, and they start working. So now we get our patients out of crisis and into thriving. And it's really beautiful to see.
It is beautiful to see. And this is a great slide, one of my faves.
And really happened to us.
And here we go. In conclusion and invitation, we have an endocannabinoid system, not because of the cannabis plant, but because we make molecules in our body like the plant. Phytocannabinoids mimic our own endocannabinoids to restore balance. We educate on the lifestyle therapies to support the endocannabinoid system and mitigate the side effects of those therapies that may cause an endocannabinoid system deficiency, pills and procedures. Endocannabinoid system care first. It regulates all other systems. And this is my celebratory jump of living my best life, having weaned off of 18 pharmaceuticals, caring for the endocannabinoid system and the endocannabinoid dome, using holistic caring modalities, which include cannabis, hemp, and lifestyle as medicine. And when we conclude the show today, I'm going to pull up the video, the 1 minute free fall of me jumping out of a plane on my birthday a few years ago.
So how do you shop for safe CBD? You want something that's Green Nurse approved. We want medicine that is made from the flowers, not just shake. CBD from cannabis and flowering strains of hemp. And it can be isolate, broad spectrum, or full spectrum. Full spectrum is going to give you your best efficacy with the trace amounts of THC. You want transparency. People that you want to do business with, not somebody that's going to put you on auto ship and send you 6 bottles a month and hurt you, which we have seen. So website functionality, transparent business, customer service, support, email, address, and phone that all work for companies. Good manufacturing practice, certified if possible, organic if possible. You want it lab tested 100%. You want to make sure that the certificate of analysis reveals the purity, the potency, making sure that it's been tested for contaminants and residual solvents. You want accurate labels. And the potency can vary dramatically. We've seen bottles that are 300 milligrams and bottles that are 3,000 milligrams with that same 1 milliliter dropper. So is that dose 10 milligrams or is it 100 milligrams? It really makes a difference on how you're using this. So don't go cheap. CBD is expensive to produce. Call the free nurse line 970-404-HOPE so that we can talk you through this. If you're new to CBD and cannabis, we'd be happy to shepherd your path and help you add this to your life so that you also can heal. And one of the things that makes Bloom Hemp different is our free care plan. So, when we're talking about getting people through this, making sure that they're accompanied with knowledge and education so that they feel very confident and comfortable moving forward, because it's new to some people, especially elders, like we just talked about. So the nurse line, premium organic hemp, USDA organic, symptom targeted formulations is another thing, for pain, for focus, for energy, for deep healing, for calming, for sleep, etc. The free nurse line, our free network, which we'll get to coming up, and then affiliate and wholesale opportunities. So bloomhemp.com, go visit the shop. And then we have a study. So this was really exciting. This winter we were in preparation, and then in the spring we launched a study. Bloom Hemp partnered with the Kenigma and the More Better Relief app, and did a study where we surveyed over 100 people, sending them a free bottle of Focus and asking them to check in every single day on their focus, their energy, their metabolism, their appetite, their distractibility, their success at work, how productive they were, whether or not it was improving, etc. And it was amazing to see this. So there are links here that we'll drop into the chat. There's the first one, that was the recruiting article, could a hemp tincture solve the 3 p.m. slump? The second one is the Bloom Focus results, saying that the CBD, CBG, THCV combination did indeed solve that 3 p.m. slump and gave people incredible amounts of energy. In fact, 2.2 hours of more productivity per day, based on a slider that really showed that people were doing very, very well on this formulation. And so it was really great to see that. And then if you go to bloomhemp.com, you can click on the research tab on the left menu bar that drops down and read all of the study and read all of the results that people put in, all of the comments that we got, and then each point of research is identified on that page. And then you can also open up and read the full study.
There we go.
So it was really cool to do some research.
And then again, what we have for you all is subscribe and receive our 7-page medical cannabis guide. Elizabeth and I put this together a couple of years ago. It's still pertinent. It's amazing. You just go to, I'm going to drop a link in there right now.
Holisticcaring.com, hit the, well, if it's your first time, it'll pop up and it'll ask you to subscribe to the newsletter. I think it's on the resources tab, and then you just hit medical cannabis guide. You can open up that box, subscribe right on there, and that will be able to be sent to your email, and you can download it right there.
All right. And what else do we got? This is your book?
Yes. Cannabis for Health, Become a Coach. That was my first book. We are working on more, but this started everything that I did in creating the programs And really it comes from, my early days in San Diego back in 2015, 16, 17. I wrote this in 2018, published it in April of 2020, 4/20, it was released. And then really it was it was everything that I needed to do to train nurses to work in this new field. As my practice was growing, I needed to train them. And so this breaks down all of the endocannabinoid system, the conditions best treated with it, and then how to begin protocols.
And then again, scope and standards. Let's talk about scope and standards.
Okay, so the Scope and Standards of Nursing was just released. It was co-published with the American Cannabis Nursing Association and the ANA, the American Nursing Association. This book is an essential document for every cannabis nurse practicing in the U.S., and it goes through the scope of what we should be doing at the different levels for a regular RN, a graduate master's RN, as well as advanced practice RNs. And then the standards of practice, and basically talks about who, what, where, when, how, and why, all of the questions that you have on cannabis nursing. So if you're interested in cannabis nursing, this is something that you might want to start with as a book. And then we have programs. So, and the QR code is for the scope and standards, but then the programs, as I mentioned, my book became the precursor of all of these programs. And our flagship one to train nurses is the Holistic Caring Cannabis Nurse Health Coach Program. It's a certificate program. You get a CE at 30 CEs for this. So that's a lot for nurses in California. That'll just take care of all of your mandated every 2-year continuing education requirements. And it goes through everything in my book and then way, way more, because it's so expanded on. It should take you a good month or 3 to finish. And then you also get a monthly mastermind. So join us in the mastermind where we really guide you through clinical and business development.
Okay, and then we have all of
the patient programs. Well, I wrote them for patients, but they are
for everyone.
Mini modules. Really what I call them is mini modules, because say cannabis and cancer. How does cannabis work for cancer? What do we normally use for cancer? What are the shortcomings of that? What is the research on how cannabis works for cancer? And then how would I use it for both palliative and potentially curative pathways?
There we go. And I think,
is that it?
I think that does it.
That's it.
That is our show for today.
A minute long, but it was worth it.
It was totally worth it. And I'm going to end with, for those of you that are watching, that are new, I did not jump out of the plane high. There was, I
just
showed
CBD.
Just CBD on board. But this is literally my celebratory jump in 2020. Probably wasn't the smartest thing to do in the midst of COVID, but I've always wanted to jump out of a plane. And, when I was really sick and on 18 pharmaceuticals and suffering, I said, if I can figure this out, A, you can call me the green nurse, and B, I'm going to jump out of a plane. And this is actually me jumping out of a plane with my daughter. Actually, it's only me jumping out of the plane, but I on my birthday, July 20th, 2020, truly living my best life. And I'm going to pull that up and you guys are going to have a laugh.
Ready.
Thank you. All right.
And there you go, everyone. That was me living my best life. And why I do this every day, right? It's because cannabis saved my life, right? And hemp helped me to heal without the high. And
Leading from
psychedelics.
experience.
Right, exactly. So that's me jumping out of a plane. Really grateful. Hope you all have a fantastic day. Happy Hempy Hump Day. And I am going to end with my other favorite video on hope, inspiration, growth, and healing, because at this point in time in our lives, we all need a lot of hope, a lot of inspiration, so we can continue to grow.
And a little bit more
heal.
MARTA.
A little bit more MARTA. Here we go. Thank you for joining us.
We're here to educate and empower patients to make choices that are best for them. We're also here to decrease stigma around what it means to feel good and be high. Hence the H for hope, I for inspiration, G for growth, and H for healing. The Green Nurse is a holistic cannabis nurse that teaches on the endocannabinoid system and the safe utilization of cannabis and other progressive tools to help people reach a better quality of life.
I was cannabis agnostic for many, many years. And you know, the more research I did, the more I discovered that cannabis is this amazing medicine.
I was told that I had a 4-stage pancreatic cancer. The doctor really told me he couldn't do anything else. He gave me her name and she called me and she came to my house. She started to give me cannabis. My oncologist was puzzled because he couldn't find the cancer anymore.
All of the learning that we get comes from the Green Nurses Group, comes from their support, comes from their guidance. I trust everything that she says.
Simply meet people where they're at. The plant doesn't, stress to grow, so we don't stress to share it. We're healing people.
Cannabis has been used as a medicine for tens upon thousands of years. Here's the big message. Cannabis needs to be federally legal. We need to have laws that are the same across all 50 states that allow access to anyone and everyone who wants to utilize this powerful medicine.